AITA for quitting after my CEO mocked my 8% raise request, and I tripled my pay elsewhere. There I was, after years of building this company, being told my experience was too expensive. So, I decided to show them the true cost of that decision. 8%. 8%. Vanessa Carlisle's laughter echoed off the glass walls of her corner office, ricocheting like bullets in every direction. At your age, Gregory, we need young, hungry talent, not expensive, outdated employees clinging to old ways. She could not even finish her sentence before another burst of laughter shook her shoulders, her Harvard MBA diploma gleaming on the wall behind her like a trophy of superiority. I stood there, frozen in that sterile corporate space, clutching a portfolio that held 16 years of my achievements, watching this 37-year-old CEO with perfectly straightened blonde hair dismiss everything I had built for this company. The leather briefcase in my hands contained the documentation for every major project, every system I had designed, every sleepless night I had sacrificed while she was racking up bonuses large enough to buy second homes in Aspen. My name is Gregory Stanton. I am 48 years old, the director of cloud engineering at Techvolt Solutions, and until that very moment, I was the kind of guy who believed hard work eventually paid off. The kind of guy who stayed loyal to a single company for 16 years, watching 28-year-old engineers with half my experience and twice the enthusiasm for buzzwords get promoted ahead of me simply because they understood TikTok better than legacy database architectures. My wife, Hannah, tells me I am stubborn. My kids think I am a dinosaur because I still prefer email to WhatsApp. But what Vanessa did not understand, what none of them understood, was that my supposedly outdated approach had kept their precious cloud infrastructure running flawlessly for over a decade. While she was getting her MBA and learning about disruptive innovation, I was in server rooms at 3 a.m. making sure her multi-billion-dollar company did not collapse. The cloud migration project I designed saved the company $2.3 million a year, I said, my voice lower than I had intended. The security architecture that blocked 3 major intrusion attempts last year alone, including that ransomware attack that would have cost the company absolutely everything. The threat detection algorithms. Vanessa dismissed them with a wave of her hand, still laughing as she settled comfortably into her ergonomic chair, which probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her office was all green and chrome. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the San Francisco Bay. Modern art that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it genius. Everything was designed to intimidate, to remind you who was in charge. Everyone is replaceable, Gregory. Even senior engineers with decades of experience. If you think you are worth more than what we are paying, try your luck elsewhere. She stared at me with that practiced CEO smile that never reached her eyes. The same smile she wore at quarterly all-hands meetings when she talked about us all being one big family. Maybe it's time to seriously consider early retirement. The golf courses are lovely this time of year. I felt something inside me break. Not my heart, exactly, but something deeper, more fundamental. The bedrock of 16 years of believing that, in the end, experience would outweigh ageism, that loyalty would be rewarded, that the company I helped build from a 50-person startup to a 2,000-employee corporation would remember those who got it there. I understand, I said softly, picking up my briefcase. The pages trembled in my fingers as I tried to salvage what little dignity I had left. Through the glass walls, I could see my colleagues pretending not to watch, their eyes glued to their screens, all while straining to catch every word of my humiliation. Look, Gregory. Vanessa's voice suddenly took on that fake tone of concern managers learn in leadership seminars. You are good at what you do. I will give you that. But you are expensive. The board sees one senior engineer at $140,000 when we can hire 2 fresh out of college computer science graduates for the same price. They have energy. They understand modern frameworks. They do not need as much hand-holding. It is just business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. As if 16 years of my life were just a business transaction. As if the nights spent debugging critical systems until midnight while she was networking at wine tastings were not personal. As if missing my daughter's soccer games and my son's debate tournaments to keep this company afloat was not personal. It was in that exact moment that I knew what I was going to do. The realization hit me like ice water, washing away 16 years of corporate conditioning and the need to please. If I was just a replaceable part in her business machine, maybe it was time to see how that machine ran without me. I walked through the open-plan office to my space. That is what it was, a space. Not even a desk. After 16 years and a director-level title, I was still sitting in what was essentially a fancy cubicle because the open office culture fosters collaboration and innovation. My desk was wedged between two recent graduates who called me sir and asked me to explain basic concepts, like why we could not just rewrite the entire legacy system over a weekend. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the rows of standing desks where 25-year-olds in sweatpants furiously typed on their MacBooks, building tomorrow's technology on the foundations of systems I had designed before they even learned to drive. The irony was not lost on me. My computer screen displayed the usual stream of notifications: Slack messages from junior developers asking me to review their code, emails from other departments begging me to fix problems they had created themselves, a calendar reminder for the weekly architecture meeting where I would once again explain why certain approaches would not work at an enterprise scale. Next to the keyboard was a photo of my family from last Christmas. Hannah, looking tired but smiling after her second round of chemotherapy. Ava, my 20-year-old daughter, home for winter break from the state university where tuition had just gone up 12% for the third year in a row. Noah, my 18-year-old son, already stressed about college applications and the crushing debt that awaited him. Health insurance was eating up 30% of my take-home pay. Hannah's cancer treatments had cost us $47,000 out of pocket last year, money we had borrowed by taking out a second mortgage on our house. Ava's tuition was draining our savings faster than I could replenish them. Noah had his sights set on engineering schools that cost $65,000 a year, and here I was, being laughed at for asking for an 8% raise after 16 years of service. Meanwhile, Vanessa had just bought her third vacation home, according to the company's internal newsletter, a ski chalet in Whistler, in addition to her beach house in Malibu and her primary residence in Pacific Heights. The same newsletter that featured her picture accepting an innovation award for the security architecture I had designed. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook I had kept for years. The cover was worn with age, filled with ideas jotted down over lunch, weekend musings, and solutions that came to me during my commute. This was where my personal projects lived, meticulously documented with dates, development notes, and implementation details. This did not belong to the company. This was my intellectual space. The notebook contained algorithms I had written on my personal computer, security protocols I had fine-tuned in my makeshift garage lab on weekends, machine learning models I had trained on my own hardware, code that TechVolt had implemented without any formal acquisition because I had been too trusting, too eager to be seen as a team player, too naive to understand that corporate loyalty is a one-way street. I flipped through the pages, each entry a reminder of nights and weekends spent building the future while my family slept. Page after page of innovation that had become the backbone of TechVolt's competitive edge. The irony was bitter. Vanessa saw me as outdated, yet every core system keeping the company ahead of the competition had been born in this notebook. I stopped at my notes from April 2021. A series of machine learning algorithms for advanced threat detection that I had developed during the pandemic lockdown. At the top of the page, in my handwriting, personal project, predictive security framework using neural networks. Developed on personal system, April 15, 2021. Below it were detailed commit logs from my personal GitHub account, all timestamped and documented. What Vanessa never knew, and what TechVolt's legal department had been too careless to look into, was that I had never signed over the rights to these personal innovations. The standard employment agreement I had signed 16 years ago covered work done during office hours and using company resources. But my most valuable creations lived in a legal gray area, personal projects developed on my own equipment, on my own time. I picked up my phone and opened my personal GitHub account, scrolling through the repositories I had created over the years. Hundreds of commits, thousands of lines of code, all time-stamped. The threat detection system that had saved TechVolt millions was originally developed as a weekend project to secure my home network. The cloud optimization framework that had earned Vanessa that innovation award? I built the core algorithms while trying to reduce costs on my own personal servers. Every major breakthrough Techvolt claimed as its intellectual property had started as my personal curiosity, my private experiments, my unpaid passion for solving complex problems. I had shared these innovations with the company out of loyalty, never thinking to protect my own interests, never imagining the company I helped build would one day laugh at my request for fair compensation. My computer pinged with a new email from HR about the quarterly company newsletter. The headline made my stomach turn. Techvolt's groundbreaking security platform receives industry accolade. There was another picture of Vanessa, accepting yet another award for work that had kept me up for months. The article quoted her talking about fostering innovation and building revolutionary technologies, without a single mention of anyone on the engineering team. I thought of my father, who had worked at the same factory for 35 years before his job was outsourced overseas. Loyalty matters, he always said. You take care of the company, and the company will take care of you. He believed that right up until the day they handed him a pink slip and a pension that evaporated when the company went bankrupt. My mother echoed the same sentiment, having worked as a secretary for 40 years at a law firm that replaced her with a computer system when she was 60. They gave her a cake and a gold watch and escorted her out the door on the same day. Companies do not care about loyalty anymore, Gregory, she told me afterward. They care about quarterly profits. I should have listened to them both. Instead, I spent 16 years building someone else's empire, believing that hard work and dedication would eventually be rewarded. Vanessa's laughter shattered that illusion like glass. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I had saved but never used. Bradley Coleman, VP of Engineering at TechFlow Solutions, Techvolt's biggest competitor. We had connected on LinkedIn 2 years ago after he reached out following a tech conference where I had presented a paper on cloud security. His messages had always been persistent but respectful, always professional. The last message on LinkedIn, sent just 4 months earlier, was still unanswered. Gregory, I have been following Techvolt's security innovations for a while, and I know talent when I see it. The offer still stands when you are ready to have a real conversation. Over here, we value experience, not just energy. We think gray hair signifies wisdom, not obsolescence. At the time, I had been flattered but unmoved. I was loyal to Techvolt. I believed in the mission. I thought Vanessa, despite her youth and corporate speak, understood my value to the organization. How naive that seemed now. My finger hovered over the call button. 16 years of corporate conditioning screamed at me to stop, to be reasonable, to not burn my bridges. What if this was just a bad day? What if Vanessa came to her senses? What if I could find a way to work within the system instead of leaving it? Then I remembered her words. Maybe it's time to seriously consider early retirement. The dismissive wave of her hand, the way she spoke of me like a piece of outdated equipment to be recycled, the utter lack of respect for everything I had built for this company. I thought of Hannah, battling cancer while worrying about medical bills. Of Ava, working 20 hours a week at a coffee shop to help pay for her textbooks because her father could not provide a better life for her despite 16 years of loyal service. Of Noah, already starting to talk about community college instead of engineering school because he did not want to burden us with debt. My family deserved better than a father who accepted being undervalued. They deserved someone who fought for his worth, who refused to be discarded like obsolete hardware. Vanessa had made it clear that loyalty meant nothing to her. Maybe it was time to show her what disloyalty looked like. I hit call. Bradley Coleman speaking. The voice was warm, professional, without the artificial corporate enthusiasm I had grown accustomed to at Techvolt. Real confidence, not the kind manufactured in MBA programs. Bradley, this is Gregory Stanton from Techvolt. I think it is time we had that conversation you mentioned. There was a pause, followed by genuine excitement in his voice. Gregory, I was starting to think you would never call. I have been following your work for years. Are you finally ready to explore opportunities where experience is valued? I looked around the open office, at the sea of young faces hunched over their screens, at the glass-walled offices where managers younger than my children made decisions about systems they did not understand. At the corner office where Vanessa was probably already planning how to replace her expensive, obsolete employee with young, hungry talent. I am ready, I said. When can we meet? How about dinner tonight? I know a place in Palo Alto where we can talk without being interrupted. Say, 7 p.m. I checked my calendar. Henna had a support group meeting that night. The kids would be at their extracurriculars. The perfect time to start planning my future without Techvolt's interference. I will be there, I replied. As I hung up, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not excitement, exactly, but a sense of purpose. The feeling that I was finally taking back control instead of letting others define my worth. Vanessa thought I was replaceable. We were about to find out just how wrong she was. 4 hours later, I was sitting across from Bradley Coleman at Alexander's Steakhouse in Palo Alto, a place that required reservations weeks in advance. He had made one call and secured a private, secluded table. It told me a lot about Techflow's influence in Silicon Valley. Bradley was in his early 50s, with graying temples and a sharp gaze, dressed in a casual blazer over jeans. No corporate uniform, no power tie. He looked like someone who had built systems with his own hands before he learned to manage budgets. When he shook my hand, the grip was firm but not aggressive. The handshake of someone who had nothing to prove. I have been following your work for years, Gregory, Bradley said, watching me over his glass of whiskey. Or rather, I have been following the sudden leaps in Techvolt's security capabilities that mysteriously coincided with your project timelines on LinkedIn. That threat detection system for the Meridian Bank contract? My team tried to reverse engineer it for 6 months and could not crack it. I felt a knot of pride and apprehension in my stomach. Someone had actually noticed. Someone understood the technical complexity of what I had built. How did you know it was me? Bradley smiled and took a sip of his drink. Because Vanessa Carlyle does not have the technical background to understand the basic principles of those algorithms, let alone design them. I have seen her give keynotes. She is great with buzzwords, terrible with substance. And because innovation like that does not just happen, someone with deep expertise had to be building those systems. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Besides, I have contacts throughout the industry. People talk. Your reputation among actual engineers is gold, even if management does not seem to recognize it. Half the security specialists in Silicon Valley know your work, even if they have never met you. I took a sip of my beer, organizing my thoughts. The restaurant buzzed with conversations about IPOs and venture capital, the soundtrack of an industry that idolized youth and disruption. And here I was, a 48-year-old engineer in a world that believed innovation stopped at 35. What exactly are you offering? I asked. A senior director of engineering position, overseeing our entire cloud security division. A base salary of $350,000, a full stock package vesting over 4 years, and a team of 8 senior engineers. The emphasis is on senior. The average age of the team is 45. We believe experience produces better code than enthusiasm. My breath caught in my throat. $350,000 was 2.5 times my current salary. Enough to cover Hannah's treatments without touching our savings. Enough to send both kids to engineering schools without drowning in debt. Enough to finally stop having to choose between financial security and my family's needs. But more importantly, Bradley added, recognition. Your name on the patents, your picture in the industry publications, credit for the innovations you create. We have zero interest in seeing managers take credit for engineering work. He paused, watching my expression. And if you happen to bring any personal innovations with you, theoretical systems developed on your own time with your own resources, we have a proper intellectual property acquisition process with fair market compensation for proven technologies. A flicker of understanding passed through Bradley's eyes. He had done his homework. He knew about the legal gray areas that large companies often ignored. Techflow was not just offering me a job. They were offering to properly value the intellectual property that Techvolt had always taken for granted. I pulled out my leather notebook and placed it on the table between us. I have commit logs and development documentation that prove these systems were personal projects. Techvolt implemented them, but they never formally acquired the rights. Bradley's eyes widened as he flipped through pages of algorithms, each entry dated and documented. Years of weekend work, passion projects that had become the foundation of Techvolt's competitive advantage. This is extensive. How much of Techvolt's security infrastructure is based on your personal work? About 60%, I answered quietly. The core threat detection algorithms, the cloud optimization frameworks, the automated response systems. All developed in my home lab before the company implemented them. Bradley closed the notebook and met my gaze. That is a major oversight by their legal department. Vanessa does not value senior staff, I said, recalling the CEO's dismissive attitude. Not even legal, apparently. She is too focused on hiring young talent to worry about protecting existing assets. We spent the next 2 hours discussing technical details, team structures, and project timelines. Bradley understood the complexity of enterprise-scale systems in a way Vanessa never would. He asked insightful questions about scalability, security trade-offs, and implementation challenges. For the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to someone who respected my experience as much as my potential. By the time dessert arrived, we had sketched out a transition plan that would bring my personal innovations over to TechFlow, all within legal bounds. All documented, all transparent, everything Vanessa should have done years ago if she had valued long-term relationships over short-term savings. 2 weeks later, I placed my resignation letter on Vanessa's desk. The irony was not lost on me. Printed on official company letterhead, sent through official channels, following every protocol she claimed to value. Professional to the end, even as I prepared to dismantle everything she thought she owned. She barely looked up from her MacBook, her attention split between emails and a video conference she had on mute, the kind of multitasking her generation equated with leadership. 2 weeks' notice, she said, scanning the letter quickly. Where are you going? I considered lying, making up some story about consulting or early retirement. But the truth would have more impact, and I was done protecting her feelings. TechFlow Solutions. That got her attention. Her head snapped up from the screen, her eyes narrowing with the first genuine emotion I had seen since that humiliating morning. Our biggest competitor. This is unfortunate timing. We are in the final negotiations with Meridian Bank to expand our security contract. I know, I replied simply. I designed the threat detection model that won us that contract in the first place. Vanessa's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked like concern, or maybe even fear. For the first time, I saw her calculating what my departure might actually cost the company. We need to discuss retention options immediately. Perhaps that raise you talked about, say 15%, plus a promotion to vice president. The offer was everything I had wanted that morning, more than I had dared to ask for. If she had shown this flexibility just hours earlier, none of this would have happened. But some doors, once closed, cannot be reopened with just money. TechFlow's offer is $350,000 plus stock, I said. More importantly, they value experience over ageism. She laughed, but the sound was hollow, nothing like the confident scorn from her office. They are overpaying by at least 100%. You will be disappointed when they realize a 48-year-old engineer cannot keep up with their development pace. I smiled, feeling a strange, new confidence that came from finally knowing my own worth. We will see who is disappointed. My last 2 weeks at TechVolt were surreal. Suddenly, people who had barely acknowledged me for years wanted to take me to lunch, pick my brain about projects, and understand systems they had always ignored. Middle management scrambled to document processes they had never bothered to learn, realizing too late that institutional knowledge was walking out the door with the person who created it. I completed all transition documents with professional rigor, trained my replacement, a 26-year-old named Evan who seemed both anxious and terrified, and backed up all the documentation for my personal projects. I also made careful copies of every email where I had shared innovations with the company, creating a paper trail of TechVolt's failure to formally acquire what it had freely used. I walked out of TechVolt's glass headquarters for the last time at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday in March. By Monday morning, I was sitting in my new corner office at TechFlow, briefing my team of 8 senior engineers on how we were going to revolutionize cloud security. Real engineers with real experience. The oldest was 52, the youngest was 38. People who understood that wisdom and energy were not mutually exclusive. 6 weeks later, the first implementation of my security framework went live at TechFlow. The same algorithms Vanessa had dismissed as outdated, legacy thinking were now detecting threats 72 hours before they materialized. Processing speed increased by 35%. False positives dropped by 60%. Our sales team had data proving we were outperforming TechVolt's best metrics by a wide margin. The machine learning models I had trained in my garage were predicting attack patterns with 94% accuracy. The threat detection system that had saved TechVolt millions was now saving TechFlow's clients even more, with my name properly credited on every patent application. For the first time in 16 years, my innovations were legally and professionally my own. The morning Meridian Bank announced it was terminating its contract with TechVolt and migrating to TechFlow, my phone started ringing. The first call was from a trade journal wanting to interview the architect behind TechFlow's security breakthrough. The second was from a venture capital firm interested in licensing our threat detection technology. The third was from Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times over the next 2 days before leaving a message I saved for posterity. Gregory, it is Vanessa. We need to discuss consulting opportunities immediately. TechVolt is prepared to offer a substantial compensation package for your expertise. Please call me back as soon as possible. We made a mistake. The voice sounded hollow, too late, driven by panic, not recognition. I did not call back. 4 days later, Vanessa was waiting for me by my car in the TechFlow parking lot. She looked different, tired, drained, without the polished confidence from that morning when she had laughed at my request. The power dynamic had completely shifted, and we both knew it. This is inappropriate, I said, keeping my distance as I fumbled for my car keys. You have put 180 jobs at risk, she shot back, her voice urgent and desperate. TechVolt is facing an existential crisis because of the intellectual property you took. I did not take anything that belonged to TechVolt, I replied calmly. I took my personal intellectual property, which TechVolt used without proper acquisition. Your legal department never did its due diligence, and you never valued experienced staff enough to care about the details. Vanessa took a step closer, desperation plain in her bloodshot eyes. She must have been working 18-hour days trying to contain the damage. Name your price. Whatever TechFlow is paying you, we will double it, triple it. We will make you CTO. We will give you equity, whatever you want. I thought of the 16 years I had spent in that cubicle while she stacked bonuses on the back of my work. Of the morning she had dismissed me like obsolete hardware. Of my family's medical bills and my children's educational dreams that her refusal of 8% had put in jeopardy. You once told me everyone is replaceable, I said quietly. Even senior engineers. I am just following your business philosophy. The next quarter, TechVolt stock fell by 47%. They laid off 180 employees in 2 waves, targeting the highest-paid senior staff first. The trade press described it as a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge and a mysterious degradation of their award-winning security systems. Industry analysts wrote case studies on the dangers of undervaluing experienced talent in competitive markets. Vanessa resigned under pressure from the board after the stock hit a 3-year low. Her replacement was a 55-year-old former IBM executive who immediately started trying to recruit senior engineers from competitors. Too little, too late. The damage to TechVolt's reputation in the engineering community was irreversible. Then came the inevitable lawsuit. TechVolt sued me for theft of intellectual property, corporate espionage, and breach of fiduciary duty. Their case fell apart spectacularly when my documentation proved conclusively that I had developed the key algorithms as personal projects. The judge not only dismissed all charges, but awarded me legal fees, noting that TechVolt had failed to secure proper ownership of the innovations it implemented. Yet the victory was more complicated than I expected. 3 months after the lawsuit ended, Elise Harper, a former customer service manager from TechVolt, came to see me in my office. She had worked at the company for 12 years before the layoffs. She was someone I used to get coffee with and complain about management decisions. 180 people lost their jobs, Gregory, she said, sitting across from me. People with families, mortgages, kids in college. Was your revenge worth destroying their livelihoods? The question stung more than any lawsuit. I had been so focused on Vanessa's arrogance that I had underestimated the collateral damage. You are right to be angry, I replied. Elise's expression softened slightly. What about the others? She asked. The ones who cannot relocate, the ones who are too specialized, the ones close to retirement. That conversation led to the creation of Experience Matters, TechFlow's official initiative for displaced senior professionals across the industry. We partnered with 3 res-killing organizations to offer skills updating for engineers over 45. We created consulting opportunities for professionals nearing retirement who wanted flexible arrangements. We became the first major tech company to explicitly reject ageism in hiring. The program became a benchmark in Silicon Valley. Other companies began to question their youth-obsessed hiring practices. Within a year, applications for our open positions increased by 400%, with experienced professionals specifically seeking out companies that valued their expertise over their energy levels. 8 months after leaving Techvolt, I received the Lifetime Contribution Award for my work in cloud security architecture. Standing on that stage, looking out at a room full of gray-haired engineers and young developers working together, I thought back to Vanessa's remark about early retirement. She had it all wrong. We were not expensive, outdated employees clinging to obsolete approaches. We were seasoned professionals who understood the difference between moving fast and building systems that actually work for the long haul. When you combine decades of hands-on experience with the motivation to prove the doubters wrong, you create something that is virtually unstoppable. A year later, I still think about that morning in Vanessa's office, not with anger anymore, but with something close to gratitude. Her laughter taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Your loyalty is worthless if you do not value yourself first. The gray hair she saw as a liability became my competitive advantage. Last month, Techvolt was in the news again, declaring bankruptcy and selling its assets to a private equity firm. The company I had helped grow from 50 employees to 2,000 was gone, dismantled by a leadership that mistook energy for competence and disruption for innovation. If you are reading this and you are over 45, facing managers who think your experience is expensive instead of valuable, remember one thing. Your knowledge is not just worth defending, it is worth fighting for. Document your work. Understand your legal rights. And never let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to become invisible. Age is not a liability in technology. It is wisdom waiting to be unleashed. And when experience finally gets angry enough to demand respect, industries change. The algorithms are still running. My name is on the patents. And somewhere in Silicon Valley, a CEO is learning not to laugh at senior engineers who ask for what they deserve. Comment. Hey everyone. This story is a powerful reminder that our greatest challenges can often uncover our true purpose. The real victory isn't just in standing up for our own worth, but in what we do with that strength once we find it. True success comes from using our personal triumphs to lift others up, making the path easier for those who follow. Let's all be inspired to turn our own struggles into shared strengths, building a more compassionate and supportive world for everyone. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.
Hey, what's going on? It's Bill Burr, and it's time for the Monday Morning Podcast for Monday, June 3rd, 2024. What's going on? How are ya? How's it going? Oh, I got my glasses on. I finally got used to these prescriptions. I think I'm going to start wearing them on stage so people think I'm smart. Look at him. He's got glasses. He must read or something. I got to shut this fucking heater off. I feel like it's going to be too loud during the podcast here. Where am I going? Can I shut it off here? Is this how you do it? Did I do it? No, that's not it. Then you hit it again. Then you go back to the fucking thing. You spin it around. You bring it down to, there you go. Anyway, we're into June, man. You know? June 2024. I love all these fucking doomsdayers that always were saying Jesus is coming this time, he's coming that time. You know, where is he? It's 2024. He was supposed to be here. I don't know how many times in my life. Something was supposed to happen in 1984. Something was supposed to happen in the year 2000. In the year 2000. Never did. Right? He was supposed to come. There was supposed to be a rapture. And if you were on the right side of God and you white like Jesus, like the Christmas Jesus that I like to think, you know, is in my image, you were going to be all right. People were going to turn around. All that was going to be left was your fucking overalls and your duck boots. And Jesus was going to take you to the promised land, right? And there you could sit. Fucking with your hunting socks on and nothing else, because for some reason your socks seem to stay. No, all your clothes go. I don't understand why the clothes go. You know, do you go up to heaven for a big fucking old person orgy? Is that what happens? Why are you naked? That is not my idea of heaven. Standing there naked with a bunch of other naked people going, we work